What up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Corner Podcast. Kel Dansby here. No old man right now. He's in Aruba enjoying the week with his wife for her birthday. No worries, though. Old friend of the podcast. He's not old. He's damn near really young. But it's been a long time since he's been on. Brett Lawson joining us. I mean, if you guys were early listeners to the show, the first go around on Patreon, everything. Brett has been around for some time. I've known Brett since he was like 13 years old.
Yep.
So now, sports guy Brett is kind of what people know him as. If you've listened to Vegas radio, you have heard Brett Lawson for damn near a decade now. Now I'm making you sound old. For
Yeah,
damn near
right.
a decade now, he has been on the airwaves, knows combat in and out, but all sports really. I've been on his show several times. And we'll let you guys know, Brett, you'll let everybody know where to find you, where they can
Mhm.
listen. That is going to be really dope. If you guys, it's weekly as well. Make sure you tune in. A lot of great betting knowledge. You know, my pockets will be hurting without this man. So it is nice to chop it up with Brett. Every time we go on your show and there's betting knowledge, I'm like, I should probably hit the sports book.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And that's what's like the beauty about being in Vegas now. Because at one point, so much of it was taboo, but now it's out there. We're at a point where if you just work in the Vegas sports media in general, no matter what you're doing, television, radio, digital, on the broadcast side, on the print side, you have to know betting because now it's just inescapable. It's inevitable. It's going to permeate every nook and cranny. At one point, it kind of did for the more niche market, right? The more niche audience. Now it's just everybody across the board. It's almost become that mainstream aspect of sports and its coverage in all aspects. So it was kind of cool to be first to the party there. You've been like into it for a long time as well. So you and Andreas have talked about it on the corner. But yeah, man, it's great to be back on the show. I was with you in the early days, in the formative years, when you were recording with Dreas and anywhere and everywhere. And now here we are full circle. And it's cool because I appreciate you plugging me there for everything I've done, in the local sports talk scene and stuff like that, stuff with the betting, stuff with the combat. But it seems like every time, and it's sporadic, but it seems like every time I make a reappearance on the corner, you and Andreas are a little bit further along in your own careers, your career trajectory for portfolios. So now you have guys. I mean, you have tenure at ESPN. Now he's there. You're at Yahoo. You're both established writers, established digital content editors. Like so, every time at this point you could get damn near anybody on the show. So at this point, if you ask me, even if you ask me to have a guest spot, but now you're asking me to like co-host, like I'm honored because now I'm like ready to get just about anybody. So if they're still asking me, I have to be halfway decent. So I appreciate it, brother. This is gonna be fun.
Man, I appreciate it. I really, really do. It looks better on paper. The resume looks great on paper.
Right.
Yeah, the hours put in. I need you just to come through the house and explain all that to my wife.
Yeah.
So it'd sound great. You're an amazing spokesperson for
Right.
that. Uh,
I'm your advocate. You're Paul Heyman. Right.
yes, the wise man, the
Yes.
wise man, Brett Lawson is coming through the crib. That's what I'm going to call you from now on when
I
you
love
come
it.
hang out.
That's one of my idols personally. So I mean, I'll gladly pay.
Yeah, we need to get Paul Heyman on the show again.
Oh
Look
man,
at this.
exactly. Point made. That's what I'm
Yep.
saying. You got Jim Ross, you got Paul Heyman. Obviously, you had numerous fighters. There's been times I've been on the show, the same episode within 5 minutes after like Tyron Woodley and Sean Porter. So it's
Yeah,
like one of
it's
those things.
crazy.
Like, yeah, and again, being in the proximity of the sports betting scene in Vegas, we're also in proximity of the combat stuff. Obviously, we cover the events themselves, but us living in Vegas, you mean Andreas, it's easy to go to any little media event they have at any point in time. Know what I mean? So like we could drop in on the drop of a dime, and next thing you know, we're hanging after talking professional wrestling and all that, and saying, "Screw it, let's do a podcast." We did a podcast right after Conor McGregor knocked out Jose Aldo at UFC 194 in late 2015. Like being in the combat scene directly there and having just enough equipment, especially like you guys back then did with your mics, with your mixers and all that, we could kind of do something remote on the drop of a dime. So in a way, we're kind of doing it now because I've been in the studio with you the past couple of times we've done my show. We've kind of done it like this, but in the past, you've been in studio with me.
Yep.
So it's kind of cool to, be able to do it on all spheres now. You know what I'm saying? It's cool to be able to chill in the comfort of our homes and have the same exact kind of conversation.
Yeah, man. Gotta love technology. I mean,
Yeah.
it's we are in year 9 of the corner, and it seems like we've had a million different locations
Mm-hmm.
and working on the next. So it's very, very fun. A lot of changes in combat sports. That's
Yeah.
what we're here to talk today. Brett, I brought you in because if people don't know, I mean, if you're watching this on the Patreon, got the NWO shirt. It's
Oh
actually
yeah.
from my wedding, new wedding
Yep.
order,
Yep.
for my bachelor party. Looking
About what,
great.
5 years ago and some
5
change? About
years. Yeah.
five,
Five and yeah, bachelor party
almost
was
half.
definitely like a month before the wedding. So yeah, it's 5.5 years. The shirt still looks great. I
Yeah.
was in the traditional NWO for the wedding party, by the way. Brett was in the Wolfpack, obviously. I could just see you with Sting paint, the
Oh,
red and
absolutely.
black Sting paint. We're gonna need that next time.
Absolutely.
But no
That's one
pro
of those.
wrestling today, though.
And yeah, I don't mean to delay it too much because I know we have a lot to dive into. That's one of those generational images that you just cannot explain to youth of today. They just have to go to YouTube and try to like enjoy it themselves. And even then, you're never going to like really be able to have it resonate with you in the same way unless you witness it live. It's just one of those landmark moments in professional wrestling.
It's kind of shitty when looking back at it. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't great. Like
No, no.
it
It was,
started off hot and then
yeah,
it soured quickly. So it's like
100.
mostly nostalgia.
And you have to like it, sometimes I like the way you do it because sometimes you have to look at the moment and look how okay maybe in real time in the immediate sense of the broadcast it was good, but how did it play out in the actual storyline? That's why Tyson and Austin to me is like the most unbeatable moment, at least in the history of the WWE, because we saw the fallout. It was WrestleMania 14, Shawn Michaels getting punched, he walks away, right, goes to retire because of the back injury, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And then obviously the Austin era begins, and next thing you know, the biggest boom in the history of North American wrestling, at least in the financially speaking, happens all because of that moment. We saw the fallout, how the wake of it all, the ensuing aftermath, with some of these other angles. Seth Rollins in 2014, the heel turn, it wound up being very good, and we saw it come full circle in a way at Mania
Yep.
this year in the dissolution of the Shield. So I'm like you have to see how these things play out. So in the immediate moment, Sting, in the rafters, stalking NWO, Wolfpack, Red Paint, that whole like saga, it deteriorated as time went on.
It definitely did. And I don't want Roman Reigns coming after us on this podcast. So
Right.
it is the second biggest boom in pro wrestling history now, because
Good
the
point.
first by the tribal chief.
I apologize to
Acknowledge him.
always.
Don't be Solo Sikoa. Acknowledge him.
Yeah.
There's only one tribal chief.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. And that's what's tough about this show, because ever since you and Andreas made it clear that there's going to be a professional wrestling presence on the show, professional wrestling and hip hop, even though sometimes so much of the nitty gritty nuts and bolts of what we have to talk about isn't in the octagon, it is in the ring. It's so hard, the boxing ring. It's so hard not to venture into those other avenues too, because those aren't topical. There's no news cycle with pro wrestling and music. There may be news events and news stories, but there's no real news cycle. It's more so just constantly giving subjective opinions and giving your tastes, right? Like a film critic or a music critic. And then, we have to actually dive into the news stories themselves and analyze them for boxing and MMA, which we're about to do.
That's why it's our show. Do whatever the hell we want. As we're speaking right now, LA is playing nothing but Kendrick music, and he's about to have a big ass concert tonight.
Yeah.
Just randomly having a pop-up concert in the middle of LA. And then now Kendrick went from like the nerdy guy that wasn't cool to like to the king of LA.
Yeah.
There was a whole debate, and I think I might do a Patreon episode on it in the next couple of days. But it's one of those things where
how a street poet became a demigod.
Yeah, like people
Yeah.
are comparing Nipsey to Kendrick now. And like, oh, Kendrick wouldn't have been able to do this if Nipsey was still alive. It's the Jay-Z wouldn't be Jay-Z if Biggie was still alive.
Yeah.
And I was like, Nipsey isn't big, but
can I ask you something? This is actually something like I almost wish we had Happy Andreas is doing this thing on vacay, but I kind of wish we had all heads in here going on this. Like, do you think, obviously with posthumously acknowledging rappers, we tend to overly mythologize, whatever, I guess.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, or just we romanticize. That's the best way. And we put this mythology around them.
Correct.
And in a way, I get why we do that as far as their influence, as far as their rankings, right? I get why people are going to naturally rank any rapper, whether it be natural causes or was tragically taken away from us or whatever. I get why people are going to rank them high. But at the same time, I don't like when people retroactively give credit just because they passed away. Like, you can't force relevance just because you're trying to pay tribute.
Yeah, and Nipsey was great.
And it's not out of line to say that.
No, Nipsey was great. I loved what he did for the city. He was innovative and selling his mixtapes for like $100 and making money, and great businessman. To retroactively act as though he was in the same conversation of a Drake, a Kendrick, a J. Cole, a Wale, like those blog era rappers,
Yeah.
he wasn't at that. He wasn't on the Big Sean level yet. He was kind of building still towards that. Him and Mac Miller are kind of on the same level as
That's
me.
that.
And people don't
Yeah.
do that for Mac. And I understand Nipsey personified a culture in LA that was very regional, but he was very authentic to that culture.
He kind of,
But
he kind of, not to interrupt you, he kind of reminded me, I know it's a weird comparison, but in terms of the trajectory, kind of what G-Eazy was on for a while.
yeah, G-Eazy was like kind of on
Like,
some Bay crossover type. Yeah, like he was Nipsey was about to cross over. He definitely crossed all the way over due to his untimely passing.
Yeah.
And that made him a crossover. Crenshaw t-shirts. You look at the Lakers or Clippers, they had like the Crenshaw jerseys for him. It made him culturally a crossover superstar after his passing. And then people went back and like again elevated his work while here, no disrespect.
Yeah.
But he just I would always argue he wasn't even the game yet. Like the game in terms of LA cultural gang banging relevance and bringing
like
that LA, bringing that LA sound back was the game. Nip wasn't culturally that yet. Nip relevancy for LA, I wasn't sure. He didn't have a project as good as YG's debut project where you felt like, shit, this is LA. And I understand they did songs together and they were cool, but he wasn't, maybe he was on that level, maybe like he was on the Schoolboy Q level, right? Like, and he doesn't have projects as good as Q's. Schoolboy Q might still have the best album this year, but Oxymoron is one of the best California LA albums in the past decade. So Nip didn't have that. So it's definitely like one of those conversations I definitely want to have on the Patreon and really flesh it out because it's like a good 45, 50-minute conversation behind that.
It's like a solid like dissection of it all because so much of it is like the socio-cultural aspects, which hip hop taps into more than probably any other genre of music. But what makes it so interesting is that now Kendrick, for a long time, it was like a socio-cultural level, in terms of just that socio-cultural. Now it's the regional aspect. Kendrick repped almost his people more than he did his city for a long, long time. Now, in the wake of everything with Drake, in the wake of everything, like with just everything that has gone on, everything with Cole, like this whole saga, this whole anthology, now it kind of seems, I'm not saying it's contrived because I get why people want to do that because anytime there's a battle that really has some substance, there's going to be a regional element to it. Because let's be real, hip hop, like anything else we talk about, it gets tribal. So because of that, we want to force the LA narrative upon Kendrick. And since the only one, at least in recent memory, who really, because because of his tragic passing, the only one who really was iconic in the sense of representing LA of recent memory was Nip. So because of that, since Kendrick is now proudly representing LA and that's at the forefront, I could see where people want to make that connection, even if it may not be there. And it's really not something that's there for either of them. Again, I understand why people want to make Kendrick the LA guy right now. And yes, he's always represented Compton to a degree, but it was more so the ties to his people in Compton and how that manifests itself throughout society. Not so much LA versus the world. Now it's a little bit more LA versus the world.
Yeah.
It's something that hasn't been felt really in a long time, at least, in the classic duality of LA, New York, West Coast, East Coast, whatever way you want to look at it. We haven't had that.
No, it's like Nas always repped Queensbridge and all of his albums early on specifically were about his tales on the block and what he sees in Queensbridge. That was just always what he was doing.
And the lyrics create visuals of that. That's what separates Mobb Deep's work. It's what separates Biggie's work. It's what separates Reasonable Doubt, early Jay-Z work. It's what represents Nas, what represents Tribe Called Quest, and what separates them and what represents them so well. Because West Coast had that, you just had it more bits and spurts. Because obviously you had it first. You really had it with like Ice-T, honestly. But then you with NWA after that. Ice Cube breaks apart, does it better than probably anybody's ever done it. And of course, you've had other representations since then.
Snoop, Dre, they had a run.
the G Funk, but then the G Funk eventually went to away from the shitty side of the city, right? The actual street, I guess you could say, like the street. What's the word I'm looking for? Like the lamentations, I guess you could say, the street lamentations, more to the party lifestyle, which made for great music. It's the reason why G Funk is so timeless and some of everyone's favorite music of all time.
That's how bad boy music went too. Like the culture just went that way, I guess.
100%.
But
it allowed it to become pop culture, like base across, like pop music base, and then it became a halftime show at the Super Bowl. So it separated itself in that regard. But like literally the street commentary of LA society, that has always kind of taken a back seat to the New York side of things, like you just kind of pointed out, where the party side of it kind of was more put out there at the forefront of LA. That's why what Puffy did with Bad Boy, I'm gonna say Puffy era is different than this Diddy, so I could talk to about him. But what he did with Bad Boy was kind of a counterpunch, because now finally it was a sense of giving the East Coast its version of party music.
No, definitely. And it's just, that you wouldn't necessarily classify until now started doing like really weird, like Uchiwali shit.
Yeah.
With that party atmosphere, right? Like he was the street poet. That is what Nas was. And to me, that's what Kendrick is. It's like, but when you say like East Coast hip hop or New York hip hop, Nas really wasn't like the first person you would go to in the late 90s, right? Like you'd say Jay or Biggie or Wu-Tang. Like, and then maybe you get to Nas like fourth.
Yeah.
Because he was telling stories about New York and about where he was from, but it was still more story based. And that's Kendrick, because like Section 80, Good Kid, Mad City, it's all about LA culturally. It's about growing up in LA and what he sees, but it's not like, partying. It's not YG LA.
Yeah.
It's not gang banging LA.
It's about the upbringing and the rags to riches aspect. It's not about I rep my city necessarily.
Yeah.
It's more about my city. My city made me. It's not about we throw it down in this city better than anyone else. Yeah. That's what G-Funk was doing and stuff like that. And like you said, when YG came along, in a way, like LA hip hop always kind of goes back to that.
Yeah, the game was like that when he signed to 50 and he started putting out shit. Like, but Kendrick never really went into that. Like, even Swimming Pools wasn't like a traditional single. Like everything, All Right, not a traditional single. Like everything's not that braggadocious thing. It's always Kendrick until we got the diss track. And Not Like Us and Mustard on a Beat, and then it was like, oh my God, he can do this too. And then everyone's like, Kendrick, and he's the king of LA now. So it's interesting to see he has that going on. Damn, we're touching base on everything. I love it. We're hitting every aspect of this, all four corners, should I say, pillars to post. And then I guess we can just touch on. Let's roll into boxing then. We've hit two subjects. Let's go into boxing. Tank Davis fought this weekend, and shit, even that had a hip hop aspect. Tank, Baltimore, that regional scene. He brought out the young kid. I don't even know his name. Young Baltimore rapper.
Me and my buddies were all like, "Who is that?" It's like I feel like we've seen him before, but like we can't put a name to face.
No, they all look the same. No, because I've never seen this kid, and I swear to God, I thought he was somebody else.
And if you don't know him, then I feel better about not knowing him.
No, I don't know him at all. Like afterwards, the only reason I knew, and I don't remember his name right now. The only reason I knew he was from Baltimore is because Getty Images put like the description and they put his rap name, Baltimore rapper. Yeah. When I was pulling Gettys. That's it. But yeah, he's some young kid from Baltimore. That's cool. And he put on for his city, which is dope. But yeah, it's one of those things where Tank, and we'll talk like more macro, we'll talk about the fight, but macro, it seems like the whole fight week and now the aftermath is trying to push Floyd Mayweather out of Vegas and Tank into Vegas. Because putting that fight in the MGM is for the 100th fight at the MGM. It's kind of like a big FU to Floyd.
Yeah.
Tank might as well put his face on the side of the building.
That's the house that he built. It really is. Yeah.
But now you're taking it.
Yeah. No, it is pretty interesting too, because this fight seems so much different than the other fights we've seen from Gervonta Davis so far. mainly just because it almost seemed like a bit of a coronation. Like all the other ones, he's had great viral knockouts. The Ryan Garcia's one was big because that was a big like social media type of fight between two young guns. Like who's going to be the face of the division, even if they're not yet the dominant champion of the division. We saw that last spring, right? And then here we are a year later, even longer than a year with the layoff time, and he comes back, and now this victory almost feels like it's like, okay, we are now witnessing something big here. Not just a knockout artist, not just a big pay-per-view draw, but legit a world-class boxer, a world-class fighter truly entering in his own as a technician, as a ring general, as a ring surgeon. We are starting to see all those elements come into play. He's against a young contender who's very formidable, but kind of green at the same time, right? Yep. We see a close fight through much of the duration of the bout, through as long as it went up and kind of up until the end, as we'll kind of get more into in the next few minutes. But yeah, like it's interesting to see how, like you said, they're kind of phasing Floyd out, because it seemed like when Floyd kind of took the reins as the guy, you know, financially speaking, box office draw, it was kind of a smooth transition, maybe not in terms of the reception, but in terms of the function of it all through the business side of things, from De La Hoya to Floyd. And even though Canelo became a big draw as far as active boxers after that, Floyd is still the top name in the sport. But this is significant, though, like you said, because I think this is a fighter that is, they hope, is embraced by so much of the fan base that backed up Floyd and the money team for so long, but also can appeal to the fan base that dreaded Floyd and the money team for so long, mainly just for stylistic elements. You and I both know there were a lot of other elements that we could discuss, but the stylistic elements, the people, because let's be real, there's a lot of casual boxing fans who understandably so, they didn't like Floyd's style, and that hurt him. We could talk to her blue in the face about how they're essentially wrong in terms of what their judgments they're passing as far as what makes great boxing. But again, people like action. Few fighters give you more action than Gervonta Tank Davis right now. So it's kind of like all the stars are aligning at the right time. It doesn't retroactively change anything Floyd has done. We're already seeing questions on the social media, boxing community about, dream match at 135, who beats who, Floyd or Tank. So those kind of things are inevitable, but I think it's a reflection of that. Now boxing has someone legit, not just a young prospect like he once was, not just a young star who can knock the piss out of people like he still is, but someone who truly can be put on any fight card, because every promoter on earth is going to want to have him. Al Heyman and PBC are fortunate to do so, but he could go anywhere, and he's going to be a cash cow because more and more people, especially after this past Saturday, Kel, are going to want to give money to see this kid fight, and they should.
Yeah, just like baseball says, chicks dig the long ball. Everyone digs the knockout.
Everyone.
And he delivers every single time. The one time he didn't, he said Cruz, he broke his hand. If they run that back, he's knocking his block off.
And a lot of people think that, that's other than, potential Loma fight or Shakur going up to fight Teofimo at 140. People think a rematch. A lot of people want a rematch with Pitbull, but nah, like I'm saying, like at this point, he's, no offense to Pitbull, he's beyond that. He just is.
Yeah, he beats the hell out of Pitbull. That's like an easy money grab fight. Right. Like if they want to stay busy, I think the rumblings, and if people haven't seen the knockout of Gervonta Davis and are listening to this show already, I don't think the crossover's there. So I'm going to assume everyone has seen Gervonta Davis knocking the hell out of Frank Martin, and it's gone everywhere. It's gone viral. It's proven two things to me. One, that Gervonta Davis is the face of boxing.
Yes.
It's not Canelo. Canelo had his time. Canelo is not that fighter anymore, especially moving up in weight, kind of took some of that power away, a good amount of it. I mean, he's a great champion and everything, and he still serves his country well. I'm not saying he's going to lose. He's just not the face of boxing.
Canelo hasn't had a viral moment in a long time. At this point, Canelo's known for being the technically savvy, veteran fighter who's going to just basically have the better fight IQ, going to work the counter game, and really just try to, use what other fighters are good at against them, which is great boxing, makes for outstanding boxing. And like you said, the first unified belt, the 4-belt era, first unified at 168. He's won multiple belts, and now at four
divisions.
Three divisions and 4 belts in 4 divisions, multiple belts in 3. And, and wants to try to still go up to 175 again. We'll probably touch on that briefly as well. But yeah, Canelo is in a way, and he's never really been, other than the 2021 year where he had that really good year where he unified the belts. He's never really been that surefire pound for pound guy. I don't know if Gervonta Davis will either, but Gervonta Davis is the guy that everyone wants to see. No one, don't get me wrong, the fan base that Canelo has are still going to go out of their way to buy his fights, and a lot of the mainstream boxing fan base will as well. But he is not that guy anymore. Canelo's not considered must-see TV, and that's okay. That's not an insult to say. Gervonta Davis is must-see television.
Yeah, Canelo, the best way I can put it, is now dependent on the B side of his fights.
Yes.
If his opponent is good, if his opponent tomorrow is David Benavidez, everyone's flocking and buying that, and it's doing gangbuster numbers. When he fought Triple G for the third time, even though everyone knew like Triple G is not going to win this, Canelo sold a ton because it's a name value thing. When he fights, Edgar Berlanga in September, which is the reports, or even this last fight, Jaime Munguia. Skull, I guess, stepped away.
That's a rumor too. Yeah, right. Because that was a rumor he made do the IB mandatory challenge, right? But
I think yesterday he took the payout and just stepped away. He's cool. He's going to sit at home and collect the check. So it looks like Berlanga's next man up. Right. But yeah, it's one of those things where he's dependent on who you are fighting. Floyd really got to that point a little bit towards the end. Like Andre Berto was shitty.
Yeah.
But he ended with Connor and then did gangbuster numbers. So he left before it was like, you're on the decline in terms of the face of anything. And I'd argue towards the end, Canelo was the face of boxing, not Floyd. So that handoff had already kind of happened. And I think we're seeing that now where Tank is the face of boxing.
After Floyd beat, people forget Floyd even fought Berto sometimes. Like after the man fight, Floyd, that was like his swan song. I mean, going back to fight Connor in 2017, like people view the Manny fight as like the final close, almost the closing of the chapter. The Berto fight was just a way for him to, because he actually even like relinquished some of the titles in between the Manny and the fight. You could tell he was on his way out. Everyone knew it was his last fight beforehand anyway, but that was almost just like the way to actually exit, because you knew he was on that calendar, that May-September calendar, what Canelo is now on. But like you said, like, by November, right around the same time, by November of 2015, when Canelo was fighting Cotto, like Canelo was already a huge draw.
Yeah, that Triple G won, like him, Triple G first. Like there was so many, him, Triple G too. He was the face of boxing from that moment on.
He had huge numbers against Cesar Chavez Jr.
He did. He did.
Alone.
Yep. So he had taken that from Floyd already. And I think it's okay. Like you don't have to retire with that title under your name. It's one of those things where Gervonta has it now. He's the biggest star in the sport. And then we'll see who can take it from him. Him and Ryan Garcia was the perfect storm of a fight.
Yeah.
If they rematch, I don't care what happened the first time, it'll be even bigger because we've now seen Ryan knock the hell out of Devin Haney. And whether he was clean, not, that court case is coming up and he'll probably be suspended probably for a year or 6 months retroactively, whatever it may be. Due to those supplements, and maybe it gets ruled to no contest, but it doesn't matter. It's like John Jones when he beat DC and it was no contest. No one's gonna be like, yo, DC beat you. And on DC's record, it may not be a blemish, but we all saw with our two eyes, you took an ass whooping.
It's fair to put an asterisk on it because you should acknowledge it for the actual like annals of history, for the actual like record book, quote unquote, but it doesn't change the visuals. Right? Like you take Reggie Bush's Heisman away. You're not going to brainwash us and say Reggie Bush did not win the Heisman. You know what I'm saying?
He's the best player in the nation that year. You can't tell me different.
Bingo. There's nothing that's going to change that. We see what we see. What happens is what happens. And, when those type of things happen, sometimes you can split hairs to make it a little bit easier for yourself. But again, you always have to come full circle and realize what happened. And what happened was Ryan Garcia whooped up on Devin Haney, who wasn't convincing in his victory over Vasily Lomachenko. I love me some Devin Haney, don't get me wrong. But at this point, I think we've seen the hierarchy of the lightweight division shape out. We've seen what Lomachenko did to Kambosos. But at this point, Lomachenko, despite looking incredible, really ever since, even including the Haney fight, ever since he first lost those titles to Teofimo Lopez, he's been so good since then, even just visually. But it makes you forget, Loma's no kid. Hank is in the prime of his career, and there's no one, I'm sorry, at 135 pounds that is taking that shot. I don't care how good your chin is. Maybe you go up in weight, 140, it's a little bit different. 135, no.
I'm not sure he touches Shakur with that shot.
Then what's that? You don't think he is?
I'm not sure in 12 rounds he touches Shakur with that shot.
I love it because I'm not trying to take the reins from you. You're leading the way here, but I was going to kind of steer. Who do you think is the right opponent for him? Because Andreas had a great tweet. He said, basically, you need to have someone who has the right type of ring mastership, the right type of defensive abilities, and the right type of chin and the craft, just the sheer, veteran craft to hang in there with them. And he mentioned Teofimo Lopez. I think that could be interesting if they were to fight at 140. 135, I'm with you. I think the only one who has a shot to beat him stylistically would be Shakur. Loma, I think, has a shot to really give him trouble for a while, but that's what you said, a full 12 rounds. And that was the problem with Frank Martin. We saw him beautifully work off the back foot. We saw him work the jab. We saw him move pretty well early on. But once Tank diagnosed him, once Tank figured him out and started cutting him off, put him in the corner, it was game over from there. Guys like Lomachenko and Shakur Stevenson are going to be a lot harder, given the type of technical boxers they are, to put in a corner. But I could see Loma getting touched before Shakur does. So I'm with you, and that was going to lead to my next question. Do you think the best possible matchup for him in terms of a formidable opponent would be Shakur? Do you think that's the no-brainer there?
Yeah, I think Shakur, they would bring out what people need to see from each of them, which is Tank would have to win a technical masterpiece and throw more punches, because he still gave away a ton of rounds to Frank. He was up one round when he got the stoppage.
And he got pieced up with just simple linear, basically the jab and the counter left hook. And that's, again, not to take tangent back to what we're, circle back to what we're talking about. That's another reason why I think Tank Davis is so appealing. He actually gets touched up in this fight. You see him with marks. You see him flush. You see him with minor cuts. You realize that he is willing to kind of go through hell, even if it may not be a physical beating. He's willing to go through some adversity to get that knockout. And people like that. But against a fighter like Shakur Stevenson, you're going to have to outpoint him for a couple of rounds. Because if not, it's going to be like one of those 12, maybe not 12-round shutout, but it's going to be a one-sided affair. Get into those championship rounds, those late rounds, and you haven't, hurt him yet, you're in trouble.
He's going to get to the point where he needs a knockout. And I'm not sure in any fight he's felt like that. Barrios, maybe, where he had to turn up. And I think Floyd came to the corner during the Barrios fight. And I was like, yo, you're down. He's like, what? Get the fuck out of here. He's like, no, you're down. Turn it up.
He's like, I'm just telling you what I know.
Yeah, no, that's it. And then he went out there, beat the shit out of Mario Barrios for 2 more rounds and stopped the fight. But it turns out Mario Barrios is really fucking good. He's a 147-pound champion now, just full champion, no interim. He's about to fight Pacquiao. So it's one of those things, as the wife calls me mid-podcast.
Right.
Hold on, telling her, recording podcast wife. Thank you.
But what's cool about being a friend of the show, because I've literally done a podcast in your living room before when she's cooking in the kitchen. So it's all good.
So it's one of those things where when you look at that dynamic, it's like, okay, you can't give up those rounds, but also Shakur, you just can't run. You're going to have to stand in trade. So we have to see the best offensive Shakur Stevenson to not get trapped against the rope against Frank Martin, because Frank was throwing, but couldn't keep his back off of the ropes because Gervonta didn't respect him. He didn't respect the power, the pressure. You should say, I'm gonna pressure you and I'm gonna break you down. Shakur has to put something on it, because as boring as people say Floyd was, he hit people so fast and from so many different weird ass angles that when they get hit, they're just like, fuck. And that gets old and they stop pressuring him.
Yes.
He put a lot of fighters on that back foot, a ton.
A lot of time, it's not about necessarily hurting them as much as it's about frustrating them. If Shakur actually peppers Tank enough times, like Frank Martin did, but doesn't get cut off, which he probably wouldn't, at least in comparison to Frank Martin, given the technical fighter Shakur is, that's playing into his game. If he doesn't hurt him, then you're just doing exactly what Tank did. Because even though Frank landed a lot on Tank, he never really caught him with anything significant that never made him, backed off that pressure. He never was able to keep him off of him, at least enough to where that knockout shot eventually came. He had the big left uppercut, the big left hand over the top. He was never to keep him at bay. If Shakur, even just working the jab and the right hand behind it, or working the rear hand behind it, is able to keep Tank off at least a little bit off of them, by comparison, you're looking at a completely different fight.
You want a hell of a chess match. A violent chess match is what they would be. Tio and Tank is just who's going to catch who first.
100%.
I've seen Tio get caught clean in several fights. That's why he got dropped and ended up losing the Cambosis fight, because he came out wild. He got hit. He got dropped. Granted, he was like a 40% due to having no lung capacity.
Yeah,
Yeah, the punch still landed, and
Yeah.
Tio is willing to throw one, to take one, and say my punch is going to hurt you, and then he'll start rolling when you get downhill. And
Yeah.
against Tank, that's really tough because, like we saw with Ryan, who had that same mentality, and Ryan's power, as people see now, is legit, and he stumbled
That was,
Tank several times, and Tank said, "I'm gonna take 2 steps back when you hurt me. I'm gonna plant my foot." And you're going to eat this left hand. And he dropped
yeah.
Ryan every time. And then
Yeah.
it was just one of those, like, Ryan was just like, fuck, I can't have this mentality against him because I'm going to stun him. He's going to stun me, but his is going to hurt way more. So Teofimo is that same thing where they'll catch each other. And I think when it's all said and done, all these guys lose to all these guys. I don't think anyone else necessarily beats any of them. I will say that. I've said it for years now. I'm going to maintain that. Gervonta Davis is probably going to lose to Shakur Stevenson.
So
Shakur
you
Stevenson will lose to Teofimo Lopez. Tio will lose to Devin Haney. Devin Haney already lost to Ryan. Like, they are all going to give each other 1, 2, 3 losses.
it's going to be like a rock paper scissors type of thing, almost like in a way like a Leonard Hearns.
They are the princes, the 5
Yeah.
princes now due to Shakur. The 5 princes for a reason, just like the 4 kings were the 4 kings. Styles make fights. They're going to beat each other. But that's it. Think it's sweet, though. And I've been telling everyone, if you think this shit is sweet and you think Ryan Garcia lost to Tank, so Ryan is now food, and you're going to come in and you're just going to beat Ryan, you got something else coming. Because you got to be one of them to beat that guy. Teofimo had 1 lung, so he lost, whatever. But Teofimo's the same way. If you think it's sweet and you want to fight Teofimo, good luck. But if you fight one of these other guys, then they have a chance.
And that's why Andreas mentioning Teofimo on Twitter, I immediately thought ding, ding, ding. And that's why I think the immediate path, right, at lightweight, it has to be Shakur because, like you said, the dynamic of can Shakur step in the pocket and trade blows when he needs to actually put up some offensive output, some volume, some violent volume against Tank, and can Tank show his a little bit of he's already a great technical fighter with a high ring IQ. Can he show some of those defensive skills? And even though he's a patient fighter, can he open up a little bit earlier to make Shakur realize that, if I do stand and trade with him, I can get caught? It's a very dice type of matchup. But like what you said, against Tio, it's really interesting because Tio is one of those fighters who, like you said, you can beat him because you can catch him, but you could also get caught with something from him. And he has, like you said, he has the mustard on his shots to hurt Tank. I don't know if anyone else really in the lightweight division group hurt Tank. Teofimo can, because we know at 140, that's where he's truly at his best. And it's also interesting, Kel, because Teofimo is sometimes, I don't want to say necessarily a slow starter, but the way he keeps his foot on the gas throughout the duration of a bout, kind of wobbly, where Tank is a slow starter who kind of picks up on a steady incline.
Something got to give.
Because he's kind of patient. So how would those early rounds play out with a fight between them if neither one is necessarily doing a whole lot compared to what we would see later in the fight?
Yeah,
so
but people say he's a slow starter, or Teofimo's like a little unbalanced. Like, you know who else is a slow starter, notoriously? Vasily Lomachenko. Yeah. And he gave away 6 to Tio. Yeah. I was like, fuck. And then he started a comeback, and Tio took the 12th and won.
And it was the 12th round that made the difference.
Tio took rounds 1 through 6, and Lomachenko was like, oh, now I figured it out. And then Tio's like, catch my win, catch my win, catch my win. Yeah. And then midway through the 11th and the 12th, won on a barrage of punches and beat Loma. So it's one of those things where all these styles, they all make fights. Everyone is so different.
And Tio has a heck of a chin too. And that 140 division is really gotten interesting in recent months. So if you take Tank and he were to say all right, even if he doesn't completely conquer 135, there's still future opponents. If he really looks good against a possible Teofimo Lopez in a possible Teofimo Lopez bout, then maybe he were to go up to 140 because those are waters for him. And what's interesting about Tank, he doesn't that's what's so different about him and Floyd. I'm not saying he doesn't care about being an all-time great fighter or having a legacy. Tank has never really truly cared about belts. He's made that clear. Tank wants to make money and knock people the hell out. And I respect it. And in the process, he's going to win belts, especially now that he's going to start fighting for titles. But at the same time, what's interesting about Tank is that he's not one to say, oh, I have to unify 135, and then I'm going to go up and try to unify at 140. Tank's like, where's the money? Feed me whoever. I will put them down. And some fighters kind of have that mentality. Other fighters don't. And that's why, again, to me, the 2 fighters, like you said, that are the most interesting matchups in either respective division would be Tio and Shakur, not only because of stylistic elements, but because in a way, they all have the same thing at stake as Tank does. It's kind of like how Spence and Crawford was.
Yeah.
That fight was so compelling because both, in hindsight, we don't think of it that way, but in hindsight, or at the moment, both those fighters were competing for the exact same thing. So that's what makes that type of dynamic so interesting. One fighter may be better than the other, as we saw that Crawford was clearly the case with Crawford and Spence, but at that point in time, they're in the same boat at the same point in the big race. Like you said, all those guys at lightweight and a few guys even at light welter are like that.
Yeah, they're gonna have another 5 years of great matchups, and I think boxing is better for it. And they're unlike years past, and now with Saudi money, everyone's gonna mix it up with everybody. Like it's gonna happen, and we'll see who the best is. And you know what? The best may end up having 2 losses. It's okay. You know, Leonard lost. You know, Duran lost. Hagler. Hearns, like
that. The one that's what I'm saying. The one thing that I think sometimes hurts undefeated fighters when you go look at their record, you're like, okay, if they would have fought so and so, you're not guaranteed they lost, but you would say even if there was a loss there or a win there, there's no doubt. You will never doubt Roberto Duran's record, Sugar Ray Leonard's record, Wilfred Benitez's record. You know, all these guys, Aaron Pryor, Alex Arguello, Tommy Hearns, Marvin Hagler, like you will never doubt their records. And I'm not saying you even doubted Floyd's record because Floyd beat legend after legend. The timing of it may have been hit and miss with some of them, but whatever. That's just smart boxing. You can make the case Canelo's doing the same thing right now. That's smart business, what it really is. But at the same time, like the record is always going to be secondary to the names. That's why so many people respect Evander Holyfield. There's no one he didn't fight. That's why so many people respect Dustin Poirier in MMA, even though he hasn't won a title. There's no one he didn't fight.
The De La Hoyas of the world. Like, just fight them. And everybody. At the end of the day, it'll work itself out.
Always. Robbie Lawler fought everybody he could just about possibly fight at welterweight. He's a legend because of it. It's what people want.
And we'll talk about an MMA legend to get us out of here. He's not fighting next week. Conor McGregor. It's
really quick. I hate that you pivoted in like 30 seconds. Or 45 seconds. We each give our quick take on it, though. With what you saw Benavidez do, right? With what you saw him doing his heavyweight debut, what do you think? Because he said he's probably going to go back down to 168 and pursue Canelo. We talked about Canelo taking on the mandatory challenger or whoever that may be, but it's looking like Benavidez won't be his next fight. Do you think Benavidez, given what you saw at 175, would have a chance against the winner of? Because technically he would be next in line as a contender. Do you think he could stand a chance against Beterbiev or Bivol?
Yeah, definitely. I think this was his first fight in a new weight division with a lot more weight on him without a traditional weight cut. He kind of just came in and was like, yo, I don't have to cut that much weight. But what you don't realize is it hurts your conditioning. Yeah, great fight. Like, people forget, or maybe they just didn't know, Vosdik gave Beterbiev hell before Beterbiev stopped him. So that was a great fight. And he was the lineal champion, not Beterbiev entering that. Beterbiev took the belts from him. So
Beterbiev, man in light heavyweight because he beat Vochin.
Yes, they're easy. So they were the 2 guys before Dmitry Bivol was a thought. Dmitry Bivol was a far third. These 2 guys were the men in that division. Bivol had 1 belt and he was just kind of trailing along. Then he beats Canelo. And now people think he's the best shit since sliced bread.
They took over in the wake of Andre Ward and Sergey Kovalev.
Yep. And they really rode that wave. Vosdik was mentioned amongst Usyk and amongst Lomachenko in terms of that wave of Ukrainian fighters. Like
he's Klitschko wave, right?
Yeah, he was in that level of conversation. So this was a tough ass fight, and it proved to be that. And Benavidez almost swept the cards. So it was a great fight, but he got tired. And it's one of those things where sometimes when you don't got to cut weight, you don't condition like you have to cut weight. So the conditioning so much is like, yo, I got to lose this weight. I got to lose. And then you look great in the fight. When you don't have to lose that weight, maybe you don't run as much. Maybe you don't do some of the cardio aspects, some of the plyos, all that shit. And that comes back to bite you in the 8th, 9th, 10th round. He has to learn how to do that.
100%. I was reading a quote. Timothy Bradley alluded to pretty much the same thing. And he wasn't impressed with me. He didn't think he could beat Beterbiev or Bivol, which is why reading that last night, I wanted to bring it up. That's why I didn't mean to stall you on going on to.
No, you're good.
talk, but I wanted to pick your brain because I still think, I mean, I remember we both had Canelo. I'm not surprised Bivol beat Canelo because looking back on it, I probably should have been more cognizant of the fact that given Bivol's style as a perimeter boxer, he's stylistically a bad matchup for Canelo. Canelo's not a pressure guy. Canelo likes for you to come to him and engage him and then beat with the counter game with perimeter boxers who really pretty much the only guys he's faced who really do that are who he's put away. You have Amir Khan, Billy Joe Saunders, and Caleb Plant. They all gave him fits in a lot of those rounds in those respective fights, but he was eventually able to put them all away with his power and just, with his accuracy and his stoppage ability. Because like you said, he's not as much of a knockout guy now that he's up at 168 and even 175, but he still, has a lot of mustard on those shots. But we saw those out boxers, those perimeter fighters give him trouble. And that's what happened with Bivol. And we should have been more aware of that. But I remember me and you did a podcast previewing that fight, predicting that fight. We both had Canelo. Canelo was the favorite. Canelo starched Kovalev at 175. Yep. Granted, older Kovalev. Canelo's still a beast at light heavyweight. And so is Benavidez, even though he may not have that knockout power the same way that we see at 168. Doesn't mean
he could. He said his hand was messed up. He suffered a cut the week before. I'm not putting too much stake in this fight in terms of power. By any means.
And I don't like one fight litmus test when guys go up and wait for the first time and face a former lineal champion with a great chin, an Eastern European chin. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Did Benavidez do any worse than Teofimo when he utterly dominated Josh Taylor? He won the same amount of rounds.
Some of the commentary post Teofimo Lopez, Josh Taylor, I'm like, what the hell? I understand we expect things from great fighters. We can't expect 12-0 shutouts every great.
Yeah, or knockouts every time. Yeah, it's unnecessarily tough bar to clear. But I will say that he showed out. He looked great. Yeah. In my opinion, going back down is more so he can still make the weight. To go up to 175, which is the same thing Canelo learned, is you have to completely invest in changing your body. Because these are guys who are natural cruiserweights coming down.
Yeah. Beterbiev walks around at 200 pounds and change.
Yeah, 210. You have to devote your entire body to getting really fucking big and cutting weight down to that division. And it takes time. We've seen John Jones in MMA. He said, when I'm going to be a heavyweight, I'm going to be a heavyweight.
And he's looking better than he looks better than his brother as a defensive end in the NFL.
Exactly. And he changed his body, and then now he cuts down to be a heavy. But when I go up to take these punches, to have power, to be myself, I have to transform my body and devote myself. And I ain't never coming back down. And Benavidez just didn't do that. He's trying to be in between both. No, he saw that. And now he's like, cool, let me go down while I can. I can fight Canelo down here. And Bivol versus Beterbiev is going to be a November fight, I believe. Yeah. Late October.
I think it's late October, early November.
They're not fighting again until next March, next April.
Yeah.
So he's like, what am I going to do? Stay at 175 for what? When I can go down, Canelo fight in September. And maybe I can even fight him in January. Maybe I can fight him in May and then come back up. And I'm not missing anything while in this meantime, because those guys are going to have to wait anyway. Oh, and by the way, Beterbiev damn near 40. I can wait his ass out and just let him get old or at least try. And it's way smarter for him. Get Canelo while you can get Canelo. Because if someone else gets Canelo, then there's no point in fighting him anymore. If he loses to Bivol again, no. If Beterbiev for any reason eats his lunch, no. Let Canelo go, beat up Edgar Berlanga, which is going to take no effort. And you say, yo, I don't want to wait until May. Let's do this shit in January. Let's do this in Saudi. But you want 200 mil? I know a guy who got it. Let's go Riyadh season, me and you, kid, and let's see what we got.
Yeah, because they won't hesitate. They'll book the damn thing. And right now,
worth 200 mil to that guy.
Hey, with all the talk about sports washing, it's a valid conversation. But goddamn, do they do boxing well? Say what you want, but they're doing boxing well.
Guys, printing money, boxing, golf.
Yeah, always exactly. It's say what you want, but they're willing to put out the money because, well, the money's there. We all know it's there.
Didn't DeChambeau just win in golf?
Yeah, DeChambeau just won the U.S. Open,
and he's a Saudi guy, right?
The U.S. Open.
Yeah, I was about to say he's a Saudi tour guy now. There's no difference. They're printing money over there, so I expect to see that. I did just want to pick your brain on Conor though before we get out of here.
Absolutely. And my final thought is it's a great point you said about the difference in weight and the difference in body size, because the difference between super middle and light heavyweight, 7 pounds. That's a pound less than the difference between super middleweight and middleweight, which is 8 pounds. However, the jump between super middle to light heavyweight, much
Huge.
tougher, much different animal than going from middleweight to super middleweight, because the body types are still similar. You're just gaining 8 pounds. When you're going to super, I mean, Beterbiev fought Usyk in the amateurs. Like these light heavyweights are fighting big guys on their way up because they themselves are big guys. So I could agree with you more. And I think either way, because those personally are two of like my 3 favorite divisions in the sport, 168 and 175. So I cannot wait to see where that goes. But like you said, timing is going to be everything as far as Benavidez and Canelo. Right. We know how Bivol and Beterbiev will play itself out, but who's going to be the 68 will be interesting.
Yeah, Vosic looked huge compared to Benavidez, by the way. Like, Benavidez did not look like he does against everyone at 168. There's like a 4-inch height difference once you get to that weight division. The hell with the weight. The height is different.
And look how small Canelo looked against Bivol and even Kovalev, who he knocked out. Look small against them.
And you're looking like, and talking about UFC here, UFC 303 has a new main event coming up. And you look at Alex Pereira, he made the jump in divisions, and he's not as big looking as it is. And he wants to, and he's teasing on maybe, fighting a heavyweight. And those guys are a lot different size. And Alex is huge.
Yeah.
But when you get up to that size and you put Alex next to John, Alex, you're not that damn big. No. And John was just in this weight class.
Yeah.
So there's that height differences. It's staggering, more so than even the weight. People can weigh out differently and everything. The height is something. Yeah, the length, the frame, the people's backs are huge.
That's why their shoulders, everything. That's why Jones was absolutely perfect for light heavyweight. And even guys that did not work out well, because by that point the chin was gone. He was just too weathered with injuries. Yeah. But guys like Chris Weidman and Luke Rockhold, perfect body types to jump from middleweight to light heavyweight. Alex Pereira has the right body type, but when he does make that jump, you realize he's not as big. He's not that big fish in a little pond anymore. Now he's the smaller fish.
It makes a huge difference. So, real quick, what do you think the future holds for Conor? First time he ever pulled out of a fight.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's tough.
At this point, I don't know. I'm not going to say we're never, and I don't mean to play the fence here or play the middle. I'm not going to say we're never going to see Conor fight again. But at this point, I just don't know. If this was it, because even though the Ultimate Fighter buildup and all that wasn't great, he had an easy opponent booked. And I don't mean easy as in the actual difficulty of the fight. Yeah. The opponent to schedule for Dana and company. It was a no-brainer, and it was a somewhat intriguing fight. And if he were to win it, he would have just been thrust right back in the swing of things, and it wouldn't have mattered. But for him to not be, available for this, will be available, but him not be actually there, him now pulling out of it, it leaves Chandler with nobody. So it doesn't really hurt the lightweight division in any way, shape, or form.
And they weren't even fighting at lightweight, so it is what it is.
Exactly. They're not bingo. That's the most important thing. They're not even fighting at lightweight, so that's not really changing the 155 hierarchy. In fact, if we do see Conor ever return at this point, I think he should just abandon any hopes of, especially with the way the top of that lightweight division is looking.
No, I think he was always going welterweight. I think it cost him a title shot.
Me too.
Maybe, because I think Leon would have gave it to him.
Yeah, and I think if Chandler wins, Chandler goes back to compete at lightweight.
Yes.
But I think Conor wins, Conor goes after Leon. Imagine doing a fight with Leon. I know he already has a fight booked in the UK. Imagine England versus Ireland or something.
Oh, they do stupid amounts of numbers at Wembley. They'll do Wembley as a venue and just sell that shit out. So,
but I just don't know.
Bilal is next. If Leon wins, then I think that's still on the table, because that's not a division where there's Shavkat is the guy at that division. And when he gets his shot, he's going to be champion for quite some time. So it's a matter of Conor skipping the line in front of Shavkat. And if you're hurt and you can't turn around quickly, that puts that in jeopardy. The best thing they could do is, if he's not too injured, is rebook him for September at the Sphere. Conor McGregor, the first UFC pay-per-view in the Sphere. Sorry, Sean O'Malley. You probably have to move to Saudi and in October.
You know what's a dilemma about the Conor situation is that he's too big of a star to put in the co-main event. this would be a lot easier because Chael Sonnen and DC were talking about that on their show this week. It'd be a lot easier if, despite being a big star, you could put him on a co-main because then the whole situation just isn't as volatile. When he has to be the main event, it is. And they lucked into a situation with this one because, honestly, they replaced it with a far better fight. We've talked about on my show how much we look forward to the Prohaska Pereira rematch. And Pereira and Prohaska to be ready for such a quick turnaround. That's some gangster shit right there. Cannot wait for that bout.
And neither guy is 100% healthy. But they're like, fuck it, we just going to scrap. There's a lot of money, and we going to get it on anyway. He ain't healthy. I got a couple broken toes. Let's do it.
We lucked right into it. We're getting a better fight because of it between guys who at this point are like higher up in the echelon, respectively, than Conor would be a welterweight.
But you pay Conor so much that you can't even put other good people on the same card as him.
Exactly. So you have a case where, if Conor wins, he's kind of right back in the swing of things at welterweight, but at the same time, you can't risk a main event with him at this time. And inevitably, if he wants to fight again, they're going to make him a main event. So sure, I deep down as a fan of the whole thing, I hope it happens. If you're asking me as a
I think we have Alessa Grasso co-main for Conor in the Sphere. Right. And it's Mexican Independence Day.
Yeah.
And I think the Mexican and Irish fans will be out. Conor loves him, some Mexican fans too.
Yeah.
So he'll come out to some mariachi or some shit. And the fans will try to chant USA because he's like with the Mexican people. And it would be a great way to make it feel special for him, the main event. We already know the women are going to be on that card.
Yeah.
Because of Grasso. You can stack the rest of the card with really good Mexican fighters. And then compared to like Leon, which I think Leon is fighting end of July.
Yeah, against Bilal.
Yeah, it's not that much of a time difference. And you can say around March, like, imagine Leon versus Conor in Wembley, St. Patrick's Day weekend.
But you just give, like, I mean, I get it. I'm not saying Dana wouldn't do it, but you really think they're just going to give Conor a title shot?
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
I get it. We've seen like not Stranger Things before, but we've seen similar things before.
Leon wants the payday. Leon was signed on that dotted line. It'll be the biggest fight of his life, transformational money. Conor wants to make history, and Dana, above everything, is a businessman. And as good as Shavkat is, it's not history. 3-division champion.
Would have thought, bro, to be a 3-division champion after not even having to fight Michael Chandler on top of it.
It reminds me of the Ariel interview that I cut up when I was at ESPN. And I use this clip all the time where Ariel's talking about him fighting Pacquiao. And then he's like, Conor's like, one day I want to be a boxing world champion. And Ariel's like, you'll have to fight multiple contenders to get there, right? And then Conor just laughs. He's like, no.
No, I won't.
No, it's just like, no, I get to skip the line. I'm fucking Conor McGregor.
I fought Floyd Mayweather in my first ever fight. You think I'm going to have to wait for anybody else?
Yeah.
Hell no.
And MMA is the same thing.
Yeah. No, you're right.
This is a business, and no one prints money like that guy.
Dana booked that fight because it was a way to culminate the Ultimate Fighter, which did not do necessarily well as far as its reception or its numbers, at least what they were expecting. But they booked that fight as a way to culminate that and immediately springboard Conor back into action, just because at this point you couldn't not give Bilal the title shot after what he's done. I mean, at that point, come on, he has to get the title shot at this point. And Leon has mentioned how he wants to possibly go up to middleweight and stuff like that. So it'd be a way to really shake up things by getting Conor in there. And if Chandler were to win, which I know a lot of people were anticipating him in doing so, he's right back in the swing of things at lightweight, because after Arman Sarukian, assuming Islam doesn't go up, Islam's going to need an opponent there. There's so many matches, different fights you can make at lightweight. That 155 in UFC is much like 135 in boxing right now. The two respective lightweight classes, or weight classes right there, are really just giving the sport a lot of great fights. But like you said, now Conor can just kind of forego all that and get right back in the picture. It's hands down the biggest fight Rocky's ever had. I mean, I'm all for it, because I was going to even ask you, like, do you think he fights again? And you're saying, give me St. Patrick's Day for the welterweight championship.
Stupid amount of money. And outdoors, just it'll be transformational for the UFC and the amount of money they could make. And if Conor loses, then you made us a shit ton of money. Thank you. If he wins, then you're in a whole different realm of possibilities. So we'll see how that all plays out. I know we got to run here now. Lawson. Let everyone know where they can
Yeah.
find you and listen to your show every week?
Before I do one really quick prediction, they do wind up fighting. You throw it at Wembley Stadium or even the O2, anywhere. Those Brits are going to turn out. Though the Brits and the Irish, they would over across the pond. That's a quick little island hop for them. That would be crazy. Who would you have in that fight? How?
Oh, Connor by knockout. That's my prediction all time.
Crazy. That's nuts. Well, that's the only way he would win.
That's my forever prediction. Connor by knockout.
Always. So you had him beating Chandler too?
Connor by knockout.
Well, Chandler was going to wrestle him, so I get it.
Rinse and repeat, Lawson. Yeah. Anytime that man steps into the octagon, my prediction is Connor by knockout.
Habib exempt, right? You didn't
pick Habib. No, I picked Habib to win.
Yeah. I get it. No, I mean, I'm with you. Hey, at the end of the day.
But if he was going to be Habib, Connor by knockout.
Oh, of course. That's the only way. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like we opened the show with not open the show, we went on a whole hip hop analysis tangent to open the show. But like what we talked about when we got into combat sports stuff with Tank Davis, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. If you could put people to sleep, they will come, right? If you feel the dreams, if you build it, they will come. In boxing, if you knock them the fuck out, they will come. To answer your question, though, or just, to kind of respond with how you just set that up as we close things off here. You can follow me at Brett Lawson LV on Twitter and all social media platforms. I currently host a show, Student of the Game. We do it every Wednesday on the Go Live Vegas network, basically internet, TV, radio, digital, live shows as well. Everything's podcast and archived as well. So a full-blown broadcast / podcasting network that we do right here, but you can catch it anywhere you are as long as you have access to the internet. So again, it's strictly digital. You can find it at Go Live Vegas. It's Go Live Vegas is spelled out how it is with an exclamation point at the end. Anywhere on social media, on YouTube. We have a radio app for our audio feed that's constantly playing all our shows. And if it's not playing shows, it's playing music. So yeah, definitely tap into that. Student of the Game every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific time. There may be some shakeups here and there, but depending on my schedule, I have to change that. But either way, it's a live show with comments, like a text line, like you get in classic sports talk radio and all that, call in line, all that. And again, you can find the video on any of your platforms. So follow me social media, Brett Lawson LV, and you can follow all my coverage and analysis of different things happening, betting analysis, so on and so forth on that show that we need to get you on, because there's a lot going on in the fight calendar right now. And I know you're busy with a lot of stuff from Yahoo, but we've had you on in this capacity. We've had you on in studio, and it's great to have you on. So it's always a cool little cross promotion here when we can get together like this.
Always, man. I'll be in studio again soon, I promise. So that's going to be really cool.
And the best thing is, as much as I love this talk, which is a little bit more sports-specific, genre-specific, my show is just general sports talk. So whenever we have you on, Kel, we dive into the fight game, we dive into boxing, we dive into MMA, right? We can't get enough of everything as far as your coverage in the ring and the cage. But me and you, as diehard sports fans in general, we dive into all of it on that show. And, of course, we can get our fandom, our personal grievances, Yankees and the Giants, and there's plenty to talk about in those avenues as well. So, yeah, no, definitely. We'll get you on for the full hour.
Yeah, man. This is my favorite time to jump on your show, because it's the dog days of summer and we get to get crazy. So people think they hear hot takes on here. Wait till you hear my NFL hot takes.
And here, you kind of keep it. I know you bounce around as far as the length of the show, but you tend to kind of keep it consistent. On my show, I kind of do I know it's a weird comparison, but I kind of do the Rogan thing. My time will fluctuate. Most of the time, as far as when it's really a standard show, it'll be a full hour. But if it's just me going at it, look at that, we have a visitor here. To wrap things up. Most of the time, it'll just be me coasting the show, doing it solo. But if ever I get the right kind of guest in, especially with no time, we'll do the full-blown 2-hour thing. We'll do 3 hours. We don't care. So definitely next time you're on, I'll be sure to push that out there.
Can't wait.
So corner can jump on as well.
Yeah, we'll definitely do it. Again, thank you, everyone, for listening, following on all platforms as well, wherever you guys listen to podcasts. Shout out to everyone on Patreon. Corner Club coming through strong. I'll record a Patreon episode this week as well. We also have producer Cole, Bebe, stopping by later on in the week to talk pro wrestling.
Oh, he has to be happy right now.
Oh, he's the happiest man. That's why we're not recording it today. His Celtics won. He's probably on a bender for 2 days.
He's recovering.
Yeah, somewhere just running through his house with my DCs in one hand and liquor in the other. So we'll get producer Cole Bebe later in the week to talk pro wrestling. Forbidden Door is coming up. There's the Forbidden Door between NXT and TNA that's going down. There's so much stuff to talk about there. We appreciate you all. But for now, for myself, for Brett Lawson, for the old man who's in Aruba. Till next time, we're out.